Hello and welcome to the Still Standing series. I'm your host, Coach Violet Coots, and I'm happy to have my special guest with me today, Paula Hill. I'm a Christian life coach, equipping and empowering individuals to live in their true identity and be who God created them to be. I'd love for you to grab my free biblical affirmation cards so you can start renewing your mind today and finding that freedom. And if you're feeling stuck in any area of your life, then schedule a free breakthrough session with me. I'd love to talk with you. That link will be in the show descriptions. Hello, Paula.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. And we'll kind of get started and just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself to get started, and then we'll get into your testimony.
Okay. I'm Paula. I'm from North Texas. I'm married to my husband Bryan for 23 years now. We met when he got out of the military. Matter of fact, the night of, and our story begins then, which is all God. I have three amazing children from a previous marriage, and my story revolves currently around our middle child who we lost in a motorcycle accident. And so Austin is forever 13 days into his 25th birthday. We have my daughter who actually just turned 31 yesterday, and our youngest son who is 25. And I have been through quite a bit of trauma, and I have not known God at the beginning of the trauma, and I learned who God was in the midst of the chaos.
Oh,
And
wow.
I will tell you, without knowing who he is, I don't know where I would be today. And through all of the trauma and through God's guidance, I became a life and grief coach after losing Austin. I am the founder of Austin Sunshine Foundation here locally in North Texas, where we walk with parents that lose young adults 18 to 26. And then I also am the founder of Fingerprints of Grief, which is a Zoom community for any and all parents that have lost children of any scenario. We're just there to be a support to one another, um, and come alongside of you and provide you tools and just love you exactly where you're at.
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. That part's wonderful. The how you got there obviously isn't, and that's heartbreaking, but but that God will take, and we will allow him to, that God will take our pain and have such purpose in that. And
Hmm.
so again, thank you for being here and being willing to share.
Yeah.
And I know that whatever you're going to tell us today, I know it's going to definitely be a blessing and encouragement. So just go ahead and share with us.
All right. As I said, I am from North Texas. I married my ex-husband from middle school and we had three children. Um, we eventually did not work out and divorced, and I met my husband on the night that he signed out of the military. And that's an all God story because I really was we had crossed paths while he was in the military. He was actually in my ex brother-in-law's unit, and I don't know, he just wasn't the type of person I saw myself with. And so God said, but I have different plans. And we met on March 10th of 2001. We married in December of 2001. And so we've been together for 23 years. I will be very honest and say I didn't marry out of being totally in love with the man. I married because of convenience. He took the burdens away. He made me feel special. And that was while I was in my complete shattered, broken life, not knowing who God was, not doing any healing, not even realizing what brokenness really was and what healing really was. I was just
Right.
living life and how I saw people in my life living life.
Mhm.
And we moved a few times and we made it to North Texas, where my husband is from. And we were in connection with my sister in law, who her children's father and my husband were not on very good terms. And so we would never go to functions where this gentleman was at. And my son Austin, who we lost in a motorcycle accident, was going to church. So he planted the seed. Um, and then this gentleman, one day we were asked to go to a barbecue by my sister in law to this gentleman's home. And I was like, absolutely not. No, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And for whatever reason, the Holy Spirit prompted my husband to go that night. And I resistantly was tagging along. And it was the best choice that he ever made. This gentleman found the Lord and became a pastor. And when he opened up that door, he embraced my husband and told him Jesus loved him. And from that point forward, we hungered to be at his house Friday night through Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we actually came to Christ in his driveway together. It was a totally different experience for me than it was for my husband. And you will learn that everybody has a different experience, not everything's the same.
Mm.
And from that point forward, we began going to church. And my whole family was baptized May 13th of 2013.
Oh, wow.
Had an epiphany. I actually was looking at the pictures just the other day and realized that Austin's favorite number was 13.
Oh,
And so it really, I was like, okay, God, I didn't see you in the midst of, I mean, I saw you, but in a different lens in the
yeah.
midst of all of that. But now looking at it completely healed and, Austin not here, um, 13 is a significant number because that was his favorite number. It comes up very often. I believe in signs, and that's always a sign for us. My husband, myself, and my two surviving children, our favorite number is 7, and so that number comes up often as well. And
Mhm.
so, fast forward, uh, we just did life. I identified in my children. I didn't know anything other than because I didn't have a mother who was in my life.
Right.
And so I wanted to be the mother that I didn't have, and I overcompensated. And I hate that I did that, but I can own it, and I made my amends with my children, and that's part of my story. Um, but in the midst, God was working miracles. And so we came to Christ. We went to church. We left that church kind of dissolved, and we became members of a church closer to home. And we have been there about 8.5 years now.
Okay.
And we have had things happen that I can only say, but God. And one of those things being, I was living very uncomfortably once I found God in my marriage. My husband had a porn addiction. I was in the marriage for convenience, not for love, and having the struggles of literally making ends meet paycheck to paycheck with 3 kids in school, trying to be the full time mom, full time working mom. I was just on overload.
Right.
And I had registered my husband and myself for a marriage conference. And he did not know this, but I said, God, if you don't do work, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. That night, we went, and the pastor and his wife were both on stage talking about pornography addictions that they both had, as well as stepping out of the marriage, and so on and so forth. Like, those were the things that really connected with us. And my husband, after the first session on Friday night, removed himself and went and spoke to these two pastors. And on our way home, he says, I have something to tell you. And I know that you may choose to leave me, and that I completely understand if you do. And I kind of had an idea, but I also was that naive person. Oh, I haven't caught him yet. And, he said he wouldn't do it again, so on and so forth. And he just came out and told me about it. So we sat in the middle of an IHOP for 3 hours because, of course, we couldn't go home and have this conversation. And I said, okay, well, this is all you. So you need to call the executive pastor on Monday. And if you want this marriage to work, you're going to have to find help. Little did I know that finding help meant that he would be in church 5 days a week in four different classes, and then one community group with me. And God was all over that because my husband also worked a full time job that was very tedious hours, and where he found the energy to do the homework and to be present at all of these meetings for one solid year
Wow.
was insane.
Wow.
In the midst of all that, one of those classes was marriage reconciliation. And while we were in that class, I realized walking in there, people were asking, why are we here? I said, oh, we're here to fix him. But in reality, I didn't realize that we both brought baggage that caused a lot of hurt. And so I was really there for myself. So this is where our life started to change, and the foundation was God, then myself, and then my husband, and then my children. So we did that for about 5 solid years straight. Never missed a Thursday. And then we were approached by our pastors who were bringing Celebrate Recovery into the church. And they were doing a pilot program. And they were like, we would love if you would come and walk with us in this journey to see if this is going to be a fit for our church. And I looked at the pastor. I said, are you telling me I'm broken still? And he laughed. And I said, or are you telling me I'm really screwed up in the head? I didn't know that Celebrate Recovery wasn't just for addicts. It is for any hurt, habit, or hangup. Really, any trauma, any flaw that you might have. It is a 12-step program. And so walking into this, I was completely blinded. I didn't know. I was naive to the program. But when I started hearing them talk and teach and hear the testimonies and really do the work, I never turned back. And I'm so
Mm.
grateful I didn't. I learned boundaries. I learned to have a slight voice. I didn't have complete confidence. Um, but it also was equipping me for what was to come later. And so I was in a 12-step program, and I was working on childhood trauma. And during that time, I realized that my characteristics weren't me. They were what I was taught by watching my superiors around me, my elders around me. And that was eye-opening to me. I didn't realize that. And I was in a season where I was about to become an empty nester. I was asking God, who am I now? Because my identity is completely gone.
Right.
I identified in my children, not identifying in Paula herself. And I didn't really know who I was as a person because I was mom, I was wife, and that's all that mattered. As long as they were taken care of, I didn't have to worry about anything else because that made my heart full. So I was probably on step 6 or 7, and I made my amends, and I had a conversation with each child, and every child, responded very differently. We don't realize that grow as the children are growing up, they all are different characters. They're not the
Mhm.
same. They're all going to have different opinions, and that's really hard for us as parents to acknowledge.
Yes.
And if you can learn that when they're younger, it'll be so beneficial for you when they're older. And Austin, he had an old soul. Um, Born blue and not breathing on July 30th of 97. We don't know why. They had to give him some adrenaline shots and do some things, and he came through, obviously. But 3 weeks later, he was also hospitalized. Unbeknownst to me, he was in the process of having kidney failure,
Oh my goodness.
and he survived that. So I call my child. He was a middle child, so I call my child the rebel child because if anybody was going to keep you on edge, it was him. He was that one that was adventurous, had an opinion, and wasn't going to filter it. But at the same time, growing up in middle school and parts of high school, he had a hard time identifying who he was and where he belonged. And so he did struggle with depression and anxiety. Of course, being a young mom, I didn't have the tools to help him. I automatically took him to counseling. We automatically put him on medication, in which at the end of, you know, our conversation before he passed, I realized that's not what he wanted. And that broke my heart. So while on step 6 and 7 and making my amends as my middle child, Austin told me, Mom, you did everything you could with what you had, and that's all that matters. And I will tell you, I hold these conversations that God had aligned before he passed on August 12th of 2022, because they're not conversations that you would typically have with a child,
Right.
a young
Mm.
adult child at that. And so with that, we had those conversations. There were conversations where he would come over, and he was just getting into motorcycles when we've had these conversations. So they weren't beautiful, they weren't fast, they weren't anything. He was just tinkering. And I'd always say, son, you just need to make sure that you wear your gear. You need to wear your helmet. You need to go home to your wife and your daughter. Um, and he said, Mom, that is my purpose in life, is to always be there for my family.
Mm.
He said, but if I die today, I die a happy man. What 25-year-old says that?
Yeah.
So the conversations were just really bittersweet when I go back and I look at how God made the path for things to be spoken, for, memories to be made in the ways that they were. So making my amends, having these conversations, um, going on with life and making memories. Just a few weeks later, Austin was called home. On August 12th of 2022, he leaves behind three sisters, two brothers, a wife, a daughter, and two sets of parents, and many, many friends that were like family. The kid would give you the shirt off of his back. He would be the
Mm.
one that you can call in the middle of the night, and he would go, you know, pull your vehicle because it didn't start, or whatever the case may be. So many stories came out of this that I knew I knew my son was a light, but I didn't realize how bright he shined. And when I got the phone call, complete disbelief, obviously.
Right.
Um, my husband received the phone call, and then he told me, and being in shock, he didn't tell me in a very loving or, you know, careful way. And that was really where things kind of got rocky for me because I didn't believe it. I went into complete shock immediately. I don't remember um, probably the first 5 days of the scenario. I do remember walking into the police department because I did not believe the phone call we received from his father in law. I asked some really tough questions. In which, the police officer was like, I can't answer that. And I said, oh, but you will, because I need to know. And unfortunately, he was on a country road coming home from work. He actually had gotten off early that day. And my daughter, another God moment is my daughter is a one vehicle family. She lives 45 minutes northwest of me. Austin lived about 40 minutes southwest of me. And my daughter went to his house so his wife and her can go to a different city in West Texas to get her driver's license. When the vehicle started to overheat, and they called my husband, and he said, you just need to turn around. It's not going to make it. You need to get home. So they did. They went back to my Austin's house, and my daughter came here. And we went to lunch. We ran some errands. We came home. I was not feeling good, and I do remember that day something did not feel right to me.
Mm.
My husband took off of work. My husband never takes off of work. My daughter had the vehicle, and she was at my house. That doesn't happen because it's a one vehicle, her husband goes to work. She stayed at home. So looking back, I'm like, all these things aligned because God allowed them. But that feeling in my gut that morning didn't feel very great. And I didn't really pay any mind to it, if I'm being completely honest.
Sure.
And so he was on his way home. He was in a passing zone in the country on a country road, and it's a very busy country road. Um, he went to go pass a big rig, and for whatever reason, it turned to a no passing zone, and he hit a vehicle on the driver's light quarter panel area head on.
Oh,
Now, I will say I instantly didn't think that this was all what happened. I felt like there was more, but I can't justify any of that. So I really leave it in God's hands. Unfortunately, his bike went split in half. His front part of his bike went 70 yards to the left, and the back end went 30 yards to the right.
mm,
I struggled with the fact of, did anybody even go and check on my son? Did anybody hold his hand and pray over him, even if he was gone on impact? Did anybody tell him he was loved? Did anybody tell him that his mom and dad loved him, his wife loved him, his child loved him? Like, it was just all these things that day. And our family dynamic changed on August 12th of 2022. My daughter-in-law, um, you know, in her grief, is grieving in her own way that didn't have anything to do with us. It was kind of a detachment, which I walked in and said to her, the church said that they will take care of everything that we need. Instead of saying, I'm so sorry, and hugging her. My mama heart just wanted her to know everything's taken care of and she doesn't have to have that burden. But I too, through Celebrate Recovery and doing my healing work, realized I was so wrong for that and I had to make an amends. And I did. And we're not where we used to be, but we are cordial and loving to one another. And we get to see our granddaughter whenever we want to. And that is amazing because we get to keep Austin's legacy alive.
right.
My daughter is grieving in a different way. And we all four of us that are surviving are grieving in totally different ways.
Right. Yeah.
And this is
Understand.
where the dynamic of our family kind of changed because my daughter respectfully thinks I talk about Austin more now than I did when he was alive. And I can see where she sees that, and I have to respect that. So we're learning boundaries. She did kind of walk away from us for a while, and you know, um, she does her thing, and I respect that. But I still will tell her I love her. I still check in every now and again. I just don't have the daily conversations like we used to. I miss those, but everybody grieves differently, and I have to give her her space.
Right. Yeah.
My husband and I, we kind of are on the same page, but it took a couple of months to get there. When I was up, he was down. When I was down, he was up, which was amazing because we had a balance.
Yeah.
Um, I have since reconciled, I won't say a friendship, but an acquaintanceship with my ex husband. We can have cordial conversations now. I can share pictures of our granddaughter. We can talk about memories. And I actually have to give kudos to his wife because she's probably one of the only people that, for the first year and a half, she consistently checked in on me just to see how I was doing.
Oh, wow.
And that's all God right there because that was a very toxic relationship. So once I let them know Austin passed, my ex husband decided that he was coming into town. He didn't correlate his times or, when the services were going to be. Our daughter in law didn't want to talk about that at the time. And I felt like I needed to start the grieving process. So I called one of our church family members and I said, "Is it wrong of me to do a celebration of life? His father's coming into town. He's only here limited time." And she said, "Absolutely not." She says, "We got you." And when I say I didn't have to lift a finger, I didn't have to lift a finger.
Wow.
I felt very blessed with that. In that process, Austin's elementary school best friend said, "Did you see this TikTok?" And I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And I'm on his TikTok, but I never saw this video. Now, going back to the numbers, 7 is family favorite number, 13 was his favorite number. This video was posted on July 13th of 2020. In an oppressed time, he was a bus driver in the big city, lots of homeless people, just really oppressed job, right? And he's looking at the rays at a bus stop in front of a train station, and he's looking at the rays coming out of a cloud, and he says, "Man, that looks like one awesome party in heaven." And there's this really sweet pause. And he says, "To be honest with you, I can't wait to get there." And a childlike giggle. Now, on the days that I struggle, I listen to that.
Yeah.
Because that day that I heard that video is the day I realized I will not be able to let grief consume me. I will not sit in my bed and sulk in it. I
Yeah.
will allow myself to feel the pain and the emotions that come with the grief, but I will never be able to sit in it and let it suffocate me because my son's faith poured out into me.
Oh, wow.
And in the midst of all of that,
Mm.
my community of 500 became maybe 20 people. And this is very common in bereaved parents, especially, but bereaved in general. People walk away because they feel uncomfortable,
Right.
because, you know, they're afraid that they're going to set you off. They don't know what to say. Just different things. And I will say, I was probably that person at one point in time. I was there for 2 or 3 or 4 months, but then you kind of felt your grief and you were doing your thing, and I just gave you the space and walked away. When in reality, I need to make it known to everybody that's listening, if you're not a bereaved person, help that bereaved person by just even sitting in a room and just consuming air with them. You don't have to say anything. If you don't know what to say, it's okay to say, "I don't have the words." Don't say something like, "I'm sorry, they're in a better place." Do you think
Yeah.
God took them because he was saving them from something? I mean, the list goes on of things that we say just to consume the moment of not being silent.
Right.
Please,
Yeah.
please, 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 please respect that you don't have anything to say. You are doing them a justice by just not saying anything. And so, with that,
Yeah.
reflecting on his video, we were going to get our granddaughter, and I call her our grand princess. And I was praying and I was asking God, what do I do? I'm lonely. This is not what I expected. I should have my community here. They're all Christ followers, they're all Christians, but they're not pouring into me a word of faith. They're not checking on me.
Yeah.
I'm lonely. God, what are you doing? Let me just pause and say it's okay to question God. It's
Yes.
okay to be angry at God. God wrote your story before you were even born. He knows your emotions before you even
Mm.
speak or think them. I get
Yes.
that question a lot in the field that I'm in now, and I will be totally honest with you, it is okay to question God.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all of that, when I did my amends and my step studies, I surrendered my kids. They're not mine. They're yours for eternity. Um, do what you need to do. That was my prayer. Just give me purpose, Lord. So while I'm praying, going to get our granddaughter, I see a very similar cloud pattern with the rays coming out. And all I hear is, "Do you trust me?" Well, that's really hard to say yes to, right? Because you just took my child home after I surrendered them.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't know, God, but I'm trying." He says, "Go out there and be the foundation I am to you to others." I didn't know what that looked like, what that meant. Okay, God, order my footsteps, right?
Right.
And so, in the midst of all of that, it became Austin's Sunshine Foundation. And what that is a foundation for local parents that lose young adults 18 to 26 in an automobile or motorcycle accident. There is not enough resources in this world for parents that lose children. It is not something that is, I want to say, common. It's not something that's expected. We're not expected to lose our children.
Right. Right.
Okay. Out of order, villanoma, out of order. And so the devastation of losing your child, the trauma that comes with it, whether it's an accident, an illness, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, a suicide, a drug overdose, an accidental overdose. Let me just say, it doesn't matter how your child passed, and my heart goes to you because it's out of order.
Yeah. Yeah.
we and we feel the unfairness for the rest of our lives. I was telling a client the other day, they were like, well, they were kind of hesitant on the word healing. And I can understand where this person was coming from. And I said, I am not null and voiding that this is a life sentence, because every day is going to be a different day of emotion, a smell, um, a, a building of a memory. There's always going to be something that triggers that I miss my child. But
Right.
it's how we handle that trigger and those emotions that is going to make our process of grieving positive or negative. And so,
Right.
yes, we serve a life sentence missing our children and sitting in that grief. However, we don't have to sit in it. We can find purpose. We need to get up and honor them every day, whether that looks like taking a shower, getting into new pajamas, grabbing a cup of coffee, and sitting on the couch. The fact that you got out of bed and had an energy to do all of that makes a difference. And I truly
Mm.
believe that. And so, in the midst of all of this, Austin Sunshine Foundation will do just that. We will sit with you in the midst of silence. We will purchase groceries. We will find you resources for mental health, because let's be real, mental health, when you lose a child, goes down even more significantly. The rate of suicide gets higher. I want you to know, while it's not fun to live without your child, you can make it a purpose to live for your child and to find joy. Grief and life can coexist. Your mindset has to be, this is going to have to coexist. And so, through all of the Austin Sunshine Foundation, we have walked with well over 30 people in our community already. And it unfortunately, but fortunately, keeps growing. We meet
Right.
we meet monthly. And I have actually opened up the monthly meetings to any child, age, or loss, because we need to build community. We lose our community. We lose our faith. And while I am a Christ follower, somebody who comes into our meeting may not. We respect that. It's a safe place I have created, but you still are going to hear me talk about God, and vice versa, of whatever your belief may be. There's no judgment. So in the
Yeah.
midst of building Austin's Sunshine Foundation, I felt like my cup was kind of being emptied a little bit. And so I went online to find support. And let's be real, I wasn't on TikTok at the time. Instagram is it's okay, but I don't find it appeasing. I was on Facebook a lot. And these Facebook groups of parents that have lost children, there's tons of them out there, thousands upon thousands. I saw nothing but negative. I didn't see
Yeah.
God. I didn't hear God. I heard I have been walking this for a newly briefed parent coming onto the group, they'd say, "Does this get any better?" The truth is yes and no, right?
Right.
Yes, it gets better because you find tools to equip yourself. No, it doesn't get better because we're serving a life sentence that there's going to be something that triggers us at all times, that we're going to long for our child's presence.
Right.
Okay. But that wasn't being spoken. What was being spoken is, well, I've been doing this for 12 years and it's like day one, it never gets better. That was draining to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That was that was false information to give to a parent. That's your experience. But that's your experience only talking the negative. What is there any positive? Are you doing something? Did you figure out who God was? Did you tell him you were mad at him? Like, there's just so many different aspects of it. And
Yeah.
so I decided to start Fingerprints of Grief. And what that is on Tuesday nights from 7 p.m. to 8:30 Central Standard Time. We get together and we support one another exactly where we're at on a Zoom call. And that Zoom has touched countries all across the world.
Okay.
Australia, South Africa, England, many of my girls in Canada, and we build community. I have people that since day one that I started this 14 months ago are still there. And let me tell you, they're not there because they are who they were the day one that they started there.
Right.
They're there because they're doing the work and they want to stay consistent. They want the support and they're building family
Yeah.
because our families don't understand who we are. Like friends, friend groups, they're kind of all keeping it hush hush. Let's not say the name. Let's not invite them to this event. And so we are creating family. My grief family is the most important. My best friend, I met her when her son passed away a week later. She lives close by. And I met her a week after he passed, just so that she knew Austin Sunshine Foundation is here for you. You're not alone.
Right.
We're talking 2 years and 1 month of nothing but complete, pure love for one another. And we're complete opposite types of people. We don't like the same things. We don't, you know, we like some things that are the same, but we're two totally different types of people. And so
Right.
This is what Austin Sunshine Foundation is creating. This is what Fingerprints of Grief is creating. And while I was doing Fingerprints of Grief, I realized I was providing tools that I was learning when educating myself and doing the grief work, that I was really doing a coaching.
Right.
And
Yeah.
someone said to me, "Why don't you become a coach?" And so I looked into it, and it's not a field that you need a certification, but clearly you want to have one to hold behind you to say, "Hey, I did the study. I am educated on this." Because a lot of the times people are referred to counselors. I had a horrible experience, and I can tell you many of my brave parents have had horrible experiences with counselors. I respect them. I'm not bashing them. But unless you've experienced what we have experienced,
Right.
it's not the same. The compassion and empathy is completely different if it's even there. You're
Right.
you're going to be counseling out of a book, a textbook. I'm counseling out of my heart and experience.
Right.
And so I did. I became a master life coach and a grief coach with other certifications under my belt, and I'm taking about 4 classes right now as well. Um and so I started out influenced by others to do this grief coaching, and with that came them walking alongside of me to build my business, in which I wasn't feeling Austin's spirit. I wasn't feeling God's anointing, but I went with it, right? You learn as you go.
Right. True.
And just about 2 months ago, I kept hearing the word lighthouse. And I couldn't understand why. Until one day I opened up my phone and I always send Austin a text. Like it used to be all the time. Now it's kind of slowed down. But I went in to look at his information and his ringtone was My Lighthouse by Ren Collective. It's a worship song from many years ago.
Yeah.
It's an upbeat song, it's not a slow song. And I said, okay, God, what are you doing? And when I say that word lighthouse was heavy in my vocabulary, heavy in my thoughts, I didn't understand it until I had a dream. And I think during our interview process, you and I kind of spoke about this dream and it wowed me. I was in a boat in the middle of the ocean and there was like hurricane force winds and just really turbulent waters that I was trying to stay away from that were behind me. And I'm calling out to God. And again, he says, do you trust me? Well, God, I'm still having a hard time trusting you, but I do have trust for you. And he says, follow the light. And I'm like, what light? And I'm looking everywhere for this light in the dark, right? Can't find it because it's whipping around so fast. And I caught it. And I said, that light. He says, follow the light, you'll get to land. And I struggled, but I got there slowly but surely. I kept looking up for that light, couldn't find it. Oh, there it is, found it again. That's kind of the story of our grief.
Mm.
I don't want to say it comes and goes because there is a part of it that's always there. Um, but there's a part of it that stays under the surface until something really triggers it.
Right.
And so I get to the shore and he says, do you trust me now? And I said, are you meaning to tell me that that light represents what life is really about? And he says, now you get it. The light at the top of a lighthouse spins around and around, and the light comes and it goes, and it comes and it goes. Well, when you look at life cycles.
Yes.
Generations. I mean, my mom was wearing bell bottoms, like when I was a teenager, that came back.
Okay.
So life in general, in
Yeah.
all different aspects, is a cycle. And so I was very wowed by what I was learning in my dream. And I woke up and I said, okay, I understand what lighthouse means now. So I started to really pray and hone in on God, what are you wanting me to do with this? And I rebranded my coaching and I didn't want the word coach. Coach to me felt like a high school football coach or an NFL football coach yelling at you to do what you need to do. These
Mm.
are your drills. You have to do this. Or a soccer coach or a softball coach. My kids were all in sports. So it related to me as a coach is telling you what to do.
Right.
And if you're not doing it right, they're going to yell at you. Well, that's not what I'm here for.
Right.
I'm here to provide you tools and to cheer you on and to hold you up when you can't stand. That's all part of a healing process.
Yeah.
So I created my rebrand as Lighthouse Healings. And let me tell you, ever since then, I am wowed by what God has shown me.
Wow.
And so I honor Austin by having those three things for bereaved parents. I want to be the light in the darkness, just like he was for others. And he has a legacy that deserves to continue. And until my last breath, I will do so. This is my purpose.
Okay.
My purpose that I was in the midst of not knowing who I was and what I was going to do with my life. Is
Yeah.
it completely sad and heartbreaking that my son had to be taken home for me to find a purpose? Am I still angry at God on days that I long for that phone call that my son is saying something really dumb to me or asking a dumb question? Yes, absolutely. And it is okay.
Yeah.
It is okay. But I keep his picture right here so everybody knows who he is and what he looked like. And I continue to say his name. And when I get on social media and I'm talking to bereaved parents, or we welcome them into our community of the Zoom meetings or whatever, I always make it a purpose to say their name. Always. Because they live in spirit.
Yeah.
You die twice, physically and when your name stops being said.
Mm. Mm.
And that's
Mm.
my story. This is my purpose. I give all the glory to God. I'm a better person today than I was on the day that my son passed on August 12th of 2022. And do I find a little bit of shame in that because I should have been a good person then? I probably was a good person. I had a lot of flaws. I didn't know them flaws. My eyes weren't open to those flaws.
Right.
But doing the work, and yes, I take breaks. I don't do it consistently. It'll wear you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't let myself sit in it either. There can be life and grief coexisting together. So the only thing I can tell you is you may be hurting today. Today may look dark. Today you may not have any energy. That's okay. The sun is going to set and the sun is going to rise and it's going to be a new day. Take advantage of that new day. And even if that means baby steps, allow yourself to grow in those baby steps. Your child would not want you to suffer in your grief. Not everybody's going to have a purpose to become a grief coach or to start a foundation, but getting up and doing things in their honor, things that they would like, going for a walk, hiking in nature, going to the beach and walking the beach, listening to the waves, being creative in writing or drawing or music. Our children all had gifts and talents. Go out and do them for your child. I used to say live for your child, right? But that can also take it a step into all consuming, living for your child.
Right.
My new motto is get up today and live for your child, but also live for yourself because grief and life coexist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And that's true. Um, I've lost my husband passed away in
Mhm.
2017. So totally different grief, but grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you walk through you walk through those things and
Mm,
everything. And I will tell people, different ones that's grieving, that's lost their spouse. I was like, look, if one day you have to stay in bed one day. Just
mhm.
don't stay in bed for days. You can't
Yes.
stay there. But to you say, so acknowledge that. But like you said, you still get up and you still move and you still do. But
It's
and you're
finding a
right.
different way to live.
Yes.
It's still living, but finding a different way to live. And it's so important to live.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
important to live. You still have a purpose. God still has you here on this earth for a purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And your story, just because your friends and family make you feel awkward about talking about your child or your loved one that's no longer here, keep telling their story. Keep saying their name. Society has swept grief under the rug. It's a shameful thing. Crying's a shameful thing. First of all, don't ever apologize for crying. Crying is actually a healthy thing and it releases the chemicals in your brain to process your emotions and your thoughts.
Yeah.
If those people don't like it, that's not your problem.
That's
I
right.
have found doing my grief work, I have found my self-love, my self-respect, and my self-worth. But most of all, I have found my voice. I have found who I am and what my purpose is. And not everybody does. I'm not saying, but
Right.
I sure hope that they try. Okay.
Right.
Most of all, it's important for you to be okay with speaking about your child, your husband, whoever has passed, and letting them feel uncomfortable because they're making you feel uncomfortable when you're not saying their name or talking about them.
Right.
We have to normalize and educate about grief.
Yeah.
There's too much of a stigma on it. I don't care how they passed, that stigma needs to go too.
Yeah.
No life deserves to be taken, whether it's an accident, a suicide, an addiction, doesn't matter. It's still a life and it's precious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if those people make you feel like a burden, then guess what? They're not your people anymore. Because in reality, we change. We're changing every day. I'm still learning who I am every day of my life. And I will until I'm called home because I'm a different person.
Right. Mhm.
And we get pruned, and we're pruned for a reason.
Yeah.
And pruning is a hard season to be in. We don't like change. We
Right.
don't like hard things. And sometimes we don't even understand why until later on when we're in the midst of something and we're like, oh, now I see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Obedience is the hardest thing to walk. I'm not perfect at it, but I learned that it's humbling. I learned that it's rewarding.
Sorry to say. Yeah. Yeah.
It's where you choose to sit in your grief that's going to make a difference.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, that's true for any of us, whether it's even grief.
Mm-hmm.
We have those choices. We
Yeah.
have those choices every day. And when you was talking about, not necessarily your people, as we grow, and as we change just as individuals,
Mm-hmm.
we go through different seasons and just but and so if we're growing and someone else is not, there's that separation, and even in that there's grief.
Mm-hmm.
You can even grieve when it's
Yeah.
like, okay, now I'm different, I'm doing something different, and this really isn't my place here anymore, or somebody else has, and they've walked in, and even in that there's grief in a lot of things.
So it's funny that you say that because there is something called secondary grief.
Yeah.
You are going to grieve who you were. You're going to grieve your friendships. You're going to grieve the job that you lost. You're going to grieve the pet that was theirs that you had to put down. There's secondary loss, and people don't understand that. They don't know what secondary loss is. It's something that you need to educate yourself on. The other thing is you're thinking that these people don't want you in their lives anymore because of your grief. Why don't you look at it as it's not that they don't want you, it's the fact that you're growing and learning who you are and becoming somebody different that maybe they're not supposed to be in that season. Not that they don't want you, because let me tell you, each and every person listening to this is enough. They are loved, their feelings are valid, they're seen, and they're heard.
Yeah.
And they have to know that.
Yeah, that's important. That is so important. Yeah. Yeah.
So while that person may not be in your life like they used to be, or maybe not at all, maybe it's not because they just don't want you there. Maybe it's because you're on a whole nother level of growth
Yeah.
and they're stagnant in whatever it is that they're doing or who they are.
Yeah.
You have to think of things two sided.
Yeah.
Look at the
And
negative
it's
and look at the positive.
yeah, as we're saying, and even in thinking with just what you said, in that growth and thinking of things on that you said, we also need to give the other person if they are growing, let them grow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Again, whether that's grief or that's something totally different, we want to hold so tightly, and then that can keep us from growing, and that has its own set of other things and stuff. But
Right.
we're all in process. we're
Yes.
we're all we're all growing, or we all have the opportunity to grow, and everything, and that's that freedom. That's freedom when we can respect each other to that point of, hey, I still love you.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of that, but I also, yes, go be who God's created you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, allow me to be who God's created me to be, as well.
Yeah. Give each other grace. Give
Yes,
each
that's
other
beautiful.
safe boundaries. It's okay to
Yeah.
have boundaries.
Yes.
It's okay to say, no, I'm sorry. I don't have the capacity to do that today.
Yeah.
You don't even have to follow up with why. It's okay just to say no.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, you know what? I need some time. I'll contact you when I can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And you're loving them in their space and you're respecting your boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Paula, this has been, um, well, just one eye-opening in a lot, in a lot of ways. It's been so heartfelt. I mean, there's been just different things. I've sat over here with, those Holy Spirit goosebumps on some things that you've shared, and everything. Uh I think it is wonderful that, you have let God use you to take this and then make that safe place for others.
Yeah.
Because obviously it is a need. It is a need and a reality that's out there. And so, to me that's beautiful. And you can do it with that compassion, because like you said, when you're talking about the counselors and stuff, it goes back to, and when you've walked, unless you've walked through something
Mm-hmm.
yourself, then there's only so much you can give that
Mm-hmm.
that person. And even when you have walked through it, our walks are still going to be different, but at the same time, when we walk through it, we can walk through some things then together, and
Mm-hmm.
having that respect and stuff. So, during all this time, has there uh is there any kind of certain Bible verse that you kind of cling to or hold on to, or
Oh, I hold on really close to John 13:7.
yeah,
Not a coincidence, right? 13 and 7.
right?
Um, I actually didn't know about that verse until the day I was getting a memorial tattoo in honor of Austin, and I woke up not wanting to go. The grief was unbearable that day, and
Mm,
I was scrolling through TikTok, and there was a influencer who had documented her cancer journey. She had a husband and a child she left behind, and the
right.
husband was actually doing the eulogy live on TikTok. And I just was scrolling and he said John 13:7. And I was like, 13 and 7, that must mean I need to go look it up. And basically, what God is telling you is, you don't know what I'm doing right now, but you will.
Yeah,
And man, when I read that, I was like, okay, God, you're speaking to me because I don't know why you took my kid. I don't know why his story was cut short. He had so much life left and he was on this path of an amazing, husband, father, supporter. Like, I don't have the answers to these questions, just like I don't have the answers to the things that I think about the accident,
yeah.
right? But I'll know one day. You'll show me. And then the other one is Jeremiah 33:3.
Mm, mhm.
So those are the two that I hold very close to my heart. I call out to him even in my weariness, even in my anger. I mean,
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah,
Yes, I'm angry. I'm totally angry. My son was taken unexpectedly, very brutally. I don't go into detail on that because it is horrific. Um My family's been torn apart. The bond that we had is gone. I'm thankful in the same sense that I've discovered who I am as a person and I love myself. I respect myself. And in all of this, my marriage has flourished. My husband is my best friend, and I don't know, besides being my soulmate, which I didn't know then, I know now, but I don't know where I would be if Austin was gone and I didn't have him to walk this with me.
Mm, yeah, that's beautiful. Mm. So you've given a lot of advice and a lot of, encouragement, but just at the last here, I also like to, I also like to ask that final, that kind of that final word, knowing what you know now and having experienced what you've experienced, what is that? What's one thing you want to leave, you want to be sure to leave with the audience?
Never be ashamed of your grief.
Mm,
Never be ashamed of your grief. Never be ashamed to speak your grief.
yeah, that's good. That is good. That's beautiful. Well, I certainly appreciate you having been here with us today and sharing um, and everything. And we'll have your information too, in the so that people can reach out because I know that there's needs out there for sure. There's needs out there, and there will unfortunately continue to be needs out there, but we'll have that in there. But and I do, of course, I always like to leave us uh, with the promise in Isaiah 43:2. And that is, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. So if this episode has been encouraging to you, then please like and subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. Uh, or share it with a friend. Maybe you know someone who very much this could be encouraging to them, and so share that with someone. And again, if you're feeling stuck or confused in your walk with God, then schedule a free call with me. I would love to talk with you and walk with you through that. And if you find yourself and you're needing to speak to Paula and talk about the grief and share your story, then with her, then reach out to her as well,
Yeah.
because I know that it's easy to see that she has that love in her and that she's going to love on you. She's going to love on you if you need that. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Violet, for having me. I'm so honored. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So until next time, everyone.